Well, hi, and welcome back to Confidence Conversations. So, for this episode, I'm joined by somebody I've known for a long time, actually, and that's Ali Grady. And Ali and I go way back to the early days of our self employment adventures, shall we say. Now, Ali is the co founder of the Thrive team, and they work across talent, well-being, training, coaching, and cover off some of the conversations that actually many workplaces still struggle to talk about around mental health and menopause. And of course, that involves some confidence and some boundaries at the same time. Now, what I really loved about this conversation with Ali is just how honest it is. Obviously, we talk about confidence being something that you either have or don't have, but as something that shifts and changes and needs looking after. We also explored like the link between confidence and mental well-being, which I think is really important and is a link that we don't always think about. Also, how self-awareness plays a really huge part in that, and why doing those small things consistently really matters in this practice that is confidence. Ali also shares her brilliant and very practical framework called Guard Your Glow, which is 5 simple, practical ideas you can actually use, especially when things feel a bit heavy, maybe you feel a bit wobbly or a bit disconnected from yourself or from others. So I think if your confidence has felt a little bit wobbly recently, or you're feeling really stretched or tired, or maybe just a little bit out of sync with yourself, there's lots for you to reflect on in this episode. So go and grab a cup of tea. It's a little bit longer than normal, but I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Ali as much as I did. So, hi everyone, and in this episode of the Confidence Conversations podcast, I have invited the wonderful Ali Grady along. I'll let Ali introduce herself in a second, but I heard Ali speak. Well, Ali and I have known each other for quite a while, haven't we?
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
since the beginning of Enrichment
Yeah.
Coaching, which is now 7 years. Can you believe that? I don't know
I
how that
know.
happened. And I've heard Ali speak on numerous occasions, but one time I heard Ali speak, she talked about Guard Your Glow, which she's going to take us through, which I thought was really, really inspirational and really interesting and really easy to use. So we'll come on to that. But Ali, welcome. Thank you for saying yes. And tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me, girl. And yeah, you're right. We have known each other, I think, the 7 years, because I remember when we met, it was at Chichester Coaches Circle at Brasserie Blanc in Chichester, that sort of first day. And we both sort of fairly new into our self-employment at the time. So yeah, it goes quickly, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So thank you very much for inviting me. So yeah, I am Ali Grady. I am co-founder of the Thrive team. We're a talent acquisition and people development business. So work with my husband, and we've got a team. Martin looks after the headhunting side of things, and I look after the training and coaching. And our training is really, I guess you'd sum it up around sort of well-being in the workplace. And it's I suppose it started off around mental health, and I'm sure we'll talk more about that in this session. And it's really sort of training managers and sort of anyone really to have those difficult conversations, I guess, or those conversations that might feel slightly stigmatized in the topics around mental health, menopause, resilience. It's all of that sort of thing. And then coaching is leadership coaching, but also coaching around menopause as well, and helping people to develop strategies to cope with some of those transitions, be that their career transition or transition through menopause, whatever. So yeah, nice and busy.
Yeah, I was going to say, look, can I ask you, what do you enjoy doing the most out of everything that you just said?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I suppose I've stepped back from doing a lot of training delivery. I was delivering a lot, and I wouldn't say I fell out of love with it, but I think you can sort of reach a point where you think, actually, I want to do something slightly different. So I really enjoyed the coaching, and I enjoy that sort of one-to-one relationship, whereas training, as you know, it tends to be a group, and often it's a group of people that you work with for a period of time. It might be a few hours, it might be a few days, but then you tend not to have an ongoing relationship. So I think that coaching, having that ongoing relationship, really fulfills the need in me, I suppose, as well as hopefully fulfilling something in the coachee.
Yeah, I think I can totally relate to that because I love the buzz of the training room because my background is learning and development as well, and
Yeah,
I still love that I get to do some of that. But I think you're right. I think the impact is greater
yeah,
in the one-on-one coaching
yeah,
environment. That doesn't say you don't have
yeah,
impact in the training room. Of course you do, but it's ever so slightly. It's a bit more transactional maybe if we're looking at
yeah.
it in that sense.
Yeah, I think so,
Yeah.
because you can't really get behind. If you've got 16 people in a training room, you don't have the time to really get behind what each of them is wanting to get out of it. And I know everyone comes with their learning objectives, but you don't really get to know the person very well. And coaching, it's a really privileged role, isn't it, to
Yeah.
coach, because no matter what the topic the individual is coming to coaching with, actually they'll generally end up revealing lots of really sort of personal stuff about them and what makes them tick, and perhaps what they're struggling with. And so I really like that. And I guess before I set up the business, I worked in HR for large organizations. And so again, a lot of the work I did there was really sort of private, confidential conversations with people. So I suppose that maybe that's where it comes from. People would
Yeah,
say I'm nosy.
yeah, well, yeah, me too. I read something yesterday. Somebody that I'm connected to has got a newsletter called Nosy Parker. Their business has
Oh,
got Parker.
brilliant.
And I was like, that's a brilliant name, and I would literally open that because that is me all over.
Yeah,
But you're
yeah,
right about this whole privileged position, and I think something that I've noticed more so lately probably than before in coaching is that what people come to coaching with often is not what they leave with.
yeah,
And I've noticed that a
absolutely.
lot. And people come with these goals, and I have a bit of a thing about goals. People come with these, coaching goals, and actually, in
Yeah,
reality, that really isn't what they want to talk about.
yeah,
There's something
yeah,
else going
yeah,
on that through that relationship is then where all of that
yeah,
kind of unfolds, and you're able to unpick all of
yeah.
that.
Yeah,
It's really
absolutely. And
interesting.
yeah, you're so right. What presents on the surface is absolutely not what is going on. And that, I think that's a really interesting bit, isn't it? I didn't do a degree in psychology, but I kind of wish I had, because I find it a
Yeah.
really fascinating subject. Yeah.
I think we've both got connections that have probably just done that or have done that, haven't we? And yeah, and you
Yes,
look at them and you go,
yes,
"Oh, yeah, that looks really
I know.
interesting." But can I really
Yeah,
commit
I know.
myself to all of that? I admire them for doing all of that work.
Absolutely. And
Yeah,
that person will say never, never again. And
never
yet
again.
we'll wait and
Yeah,
see.
yeah. We don't believe you. I love it. Oh, so Ali, tell me what does confidence mean to you?
Well, what does confidence mean to me? Really, really good question. And I was reflecting before I sort of joined the call, thinking I feel a bit of a fraud actually coming on talking about confidence, because I guess, so often, so much of my life, I've probably felt like a bit of an imposter, like many people. And I've had to work hard at that confidence piece, and yet that isn't necessarily what other people would have seen on the outside. I've worked for large organizations, and I've had some pretty senior jobs, and if I'd ever divulged to somebody that I was sort of not feeling so confident, they probably would have doubted it. I know they did, because they'd say. So what does confidence mean to me? I guess um, I've not really thought about this answer. So the
Put
question,
you
the
on the
word,
spot.
the terminology I'm going to use will probably be interesting to a psychologist. I think for me, it is about feeling in control, actually. And I've reflected on times when I sort of feel most confident, and it is often when I know my subject or I'm passionate about it, something that I'm really interested in, and actually, even if I don't know all the answers, it feels okay because I don't worry about it. So confidence, yeah, it for me is about feeling in control, even though somebody else looking in might not say, well, you don't know this or you don't know that. So it's an inner feeling, I suppose, is what I'm getting to, and that can be really hard to define. It can be really hard to measure, and what it feels like to me will be very different to somebody else, and those confidence levels can change quite quickly even in the course of a day.
Yeah.
Depending
Somebody
on
once
what.
said to me, confidence is hard won and easy lost. And that's so
Yes,
true, isn't it, when
yes,
you think about it? And
yeah,
I imposter syndrome is something that is quite I love the topic, and I loved it that much that I wanted to understand a bit more, and so I did some coach training with the Imposter Syndrome Institute. They're an American based business, but Dr. Valerie Young has done like 40 years of research based on the client's original research back in the 70s, because I feel like there's a lot of untruths. I can't think of a better word. Untruths out there, a lot of myths out there about imposter
yeah,
syndrome. But what you said about, for most of my career, I've kind of felt like an imposter, a fraud, however, whatever the languages we want to
yeah,
use. And you're quite right, for somebody looking in, that's not what they see. And one of the
yeah,
things that Dr. Valerie Young talks about is this humble realist, and she says that the only way we're ever going to change feeling like an imposter is to stop thinking like one,
yeah,
because our feelings are often the last things to change, but our actions we can change. But it's
mm.
hard work when you felt like that all
It
the time.
it so is, yeah,
Yeah,
it really is, and you just saying there about we can change our thinking, being very open. I've had some talking therapies in the
yeah,
past. I'm sure we'll get onto reasons why, but um, I've had some CBT, and that is all about reframing your
reframe.
your thinking, and that for me was the most helpful thing that I've ever done. So I am probably constantly thinking about my thoughts and checking in with myself. Are they positive? Are they negative? And when I'm not feeling so confident, they will definitely be less positive. And so it's that constant sort of I don't want to say battle, because it's not a battle anymore. It is almost it doesn't feel unnatural, and it feels very helpful to be saying to myself, what's the evidence for that? You know,
Yeah,
if
that,
I've got a
yeah,
negative thought, I'm gonna go and do so. If, let's say I'm going to give a presentation, and I'm gonna forget, everything that I'm gonna say. It's not gonna go down well. What's the evidence for that? When was the last time that happened? And what's the worst that could happen as well? You
yeah.
know,
And what's the best that can
generally,
happen as well?
exactly,
Yeah,
yeah,
I think it's
exactly,
really interesting, isn't it, how we this reframe and this kind of piece that says, oh, this the worst is going to happen, I'm going to forget everything, I'm going to.
yeah,
And one of my favorite coaching questions is, well, where's the evidence for that? When has that ever
yeah,
happened? And
yeah,
most people will go, well, never. I think I've had one person that's gone, well, actually it did, and I had this bit of, and then we worked with that. But even just this morning, I've been and had my nails done, and the lady that was doing my nails, we were talking about something, and she said, oh yeah, they've seen the worst of me. And I was like, and the best of you? And she's like, oh yeah, we'll go with that, that's much better. Just that
yeah,
slight reframe of,
yeah,
and
yeah.
of course, again, in the with Dr. Valerie Young and her research, she talks about the thing that I love is the act as if you are confident, your
Yeah,
behaviors, and then you'll kind of start to believe it,
yeah, yeah,
rather than the whole fake it till you make it thing.
yeah. But it is hard, isn't it? Because we
Yeah.
are wired as humans to look out for the obstacles, the danger in life, and
Yeah.
what is dangerous now is very different to what
Yeah.
was dangerous 2,000 years ago. These days it's your text pinging or an email ping, isn't it? Why, what trouble am I in?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're on hyper alert all the time, aren't we? So it is.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I was because we're not long after the Artemis mission around the moon,
Yeah.
the far side of the moon, which was brilliant.
Yeah.
And I was listening to something the other day. I'm probably going to get this wrong, but I was listening to something the other day where they talked about rational versus irrational fears. And
Yeah.
they said, we've got no rational fears because we've done all the checks, all the logic says this is
Yeah.
how it should work. We've done all the,
Yeah.
everything we should do in order to make this work. So I've got no rational fears. I guess
Yeah.
there is still the
Yeah.
irrational ones of, well, what's going to happen here?
Yeah.
But the rational fears were all managed. And I thought that was really interesting. I might have to see if I can
Yeah.
find that clip from that
Mm.
interview, just about how
Yeah.
because there must be so much going through their mind as they're flying around the
Crikey.
moon.
Exactly. Puts my fears of delivering some online training and your IT completely crashing into, perspective, doesn't it? And I used to think, that would be the worst thing that could ever happen to me, and it did happen once. I literally lost 16 people on a training course halfway through the day. My laptop absolutely died, so I couldn't even get back in touch with these people and you know what, everyone's still alive.
Exactly.
The client put me for more work. It really wasn't the end of the world, but I guess that's the human brain, isn't it? But I've not traveled around the moon and had to worry about what could potentially go wrong there.
I mean, everything's relative, isn't it? I mean, I remember you were talking earlier about, confidence and being in control and kind of being prepared and having knowledge. And I remember years ago, I've probably talked about this before, but I remember going for a senior manager assessment when I was a store manager. And we had to do, it was like an assessment centre. So there was an interview, there was a presentation, there was a group activity, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I remember I'd done quite a lot of preparation for the presentation, and it wasn't in the days of cloud storage. We took things on a CD, right, or a USB.
Oh,
that's how long ago it was.
Not acetates, though.
No, not quite that bad. However, I remember thinking to myself, maybe I should just do some things a little bit differently, because what if I get there and my USB doesn't work or my CD doesn't work?
Yeah.
And I did, and I think I took handouts and thought about different ways I could do it. And when I got there, the tech didn't work. And I've reflected on that over the years and thought, I think that was a test. I think they did that to see how I would cope in a crisis. But because my natural kind of behaviour is to maybe over prepare a little bit, I was over prepared in that situation. But I think how that's manifested itself now is when I go to do anything, I put a copy on saved in the cloud. I'll save it to my desktop so I can access it, because I was convinced that was a test to see how I coped as part of the assessment.
Yeah, I mean, I would describe myself as being highly anxious, actually, most of the time. I think I've maybe only realised that in more recent years, and it's only, I think, perhaps menopause has got something to do with that. But as I've reflected as an earlier years, I've always been highly anxious. I just didn't necessarily call it that or recognize it as that or masked it quite well. And but I like to think of it as a bit of a superpower, because thinking of all the what ifs, actually, I would be exactly like you. I would have that backup plan, and all of that thinking helps me do that. So, again, it's reframing something that people might perceive as a negative, isn't it? Who wants to be anxious? Probably not many people, but actually, if you think of it as in a positive, then maybe you can sit with it a bit better.
Differently. And I wonder as well, when you've just said that, highly anxious, because my initial reaction to that was, really? And I wonder how many other people have gone, as they're listening to it, if they know you or don't. Oh, it's interesting that you describe yourself as that. But then it's that reframe for me that's like, oh, well, actually, I use that as my, and I know that won't work for everybody, but understanding how that shows up for you. Because I know I wouldn't describe myself as highly anxious, but I do have those moments of, I probably feel anxious when I feel out of control. And that could be anything from my emails are out of control. I've got lots of things going on and I feel like I'm air traffic control with planes coming into land,
Yeah.
planes circling, planes on the ground. What do I do with this, that? And I've found that for me, I just need to leave it all and go out for a walk.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that brings me a little bit of calm and
Yeah.
clarity, I
Yeah.
suppose, to a situation.
Yeah, definitely taking a break gives a different perspective, doesn't it? And
Yeah.
um, I've spent pretty much all of my corporate career never taking a lunch break, working ridiculous hours,
Yeah.
and actually, since working for myself, I can't afford to burn out because if you
No.
don't work, if you are the business essentially, and so I do pretty much always take a lunch break now, and
Yeah.
I'm much better with my hours, and I've learned actually, yeah, you do need that break because it does give a completely different perspective, and also not to um, if there is something that's a bit troublesome for you, either you don't know how to respond to an email, or you've got a problem that you don't know how to solve, no matter how big it feels that day, the next day after a night's sleep, it probably is okay and you've got the
Yeah.
answer, or actually you'll be thinking, what was I worrying about?
Yeah, yeah. And you're right about corporate life. I mean, I used to spend 4 hours a day on the M25 pretty much while
Yeah,
traveling to and from. And I look back
yeah,
now and think, how did I even do that? I mean, I'm a
I
lot
know.
older now than I was then, but yeah, 12 years of I think each year I did 25,000 miles, which is once around
Yeah,
the earth.
yeah, wow.
On the motorway, and I just think, how
Yeah,
did I do that drive and then do a day's work and then
yeah,
drive home?
yes.
How, yeah. And now if I
I
have to be up before 7, I'm like, what?
I'm exactly the same. So I don't know I don't know how to do you, but I was
No.
an extreme commuter and I used to commute 3 hours each way, pretty much. And so that's 6 hours on top of
Yeah,
a working day,
I know.
which is ridiculous. And then, as you say, drive home, or however you sort of. I mean, often I'd be driving or going by train, and I don't have a good track record with the train system. Um, yeah, and you just think, why did you do that? And
Yeah,
we'll come on to talking about this, but boundaries now are really
yeah.
important.
So
So
important. Yeah,
yeah,
it's so
yeah.
important. Okay, so what is your link then for you between mental health and confidence? I mean, it might seem obvious, but what is your link between the
Mm.
two?
It is. They are so interlinked. I mean, we know that mental health affects it's part of our overall well-being, and it's part of how we, think, feel, and behave. And when we're not feeling confident, generally, it's probably a sign that you are struggling with your mental health a little bit. That's not to say you've got a mental health condition, but we
Mm,
all have those low days. We all have those
yeah.
down days because we can't appreciate the good unless we have those. And as human beings, we do have a range of emotions, and life is difficult at times. So, when we have those times when everything feels a bit more of a struggle, that starts to affect the confidence. It starts to
Mm,
erode the confidence. And for me, that link between my own personal mental health and confidence is around sort of my well-being, and looking after my mental health, and one way in which I do that, and it's the most important way, and it has been all my life, even since I was a really small child, is through sleep. Actually, if I don't get enough
so
sleep, it is, I become emotional wreck because I'm an emotional person as well. So if I am struggling, then that will come out in my emotions. I'm a crier. I cry for every emotion. And again, I talked about anxiety being a superpower. I think of my ability to cry as a superpower. I spent years in therapy and lots of money in therapy, trying not to cry when I
mm,
thought other people thought I shouldn't cry. And actually, what I've learned is that that ability to cry is, for me, really important because it's a stress release. So the
yeah.
minute that sort of release comes, actually, I start to be able to problem solve. I start to be able to put things into perspective, and I can generally sort of move on from it quite quickly. And that all comes back to sleep and physical well-being. So looking after your physical well-being is so important for our mental well-being, and that impacts confidence. 100%.
I mean, I know that you're really self-aware anyway, but isn't it interesting that the connection you've made there with crying, and actually then your ability to, right, that's a release for me. Whereas for some other people, that might be shouting, or it might be going for a walk,
Yeah,
or there'll be other ways people do that.
yeah,
But anyone that's listening that feels that they shouldn't cry, I hate the word
yeah,
shouldn't anyway. Um, but that's a whole nother conversation, I
yeah,
think, is about, but why not? Because
yeah.
actually it's
And,
okay,
and
right?
and it's because it's because it's not really. It is okay. It absolutely is okay. And um, I've absolutely cried at times when the corporate world would say you shouldn't cry. That's not leadership. That's not appropriate. I've cried when society would say, "What are you crying for? You shouldn't be crying." Um, but it is a form of release, and I think it's healthy, but there's so much shame and stigma attached to it,
Yeah.
and often that comes from people's response or their inability to respond to it. If somebody's crying, I've had people say, um, or well, I didn't know what to say, and actually, you don't need to say anything. If somebody's crying, it's just sort of being there in that moment. I know it feels awkward for other people, but yeah, chances are the individual that's crying is probably thinking, "Why am I crying? I don't want to," and
Yeah, or
so
then
yeah,
they'll go into that, I'm sorry, I'm crying.
yeah, yeah,
Which
yeah.
there's absolutely no need to, or I don't know why
No,
I'm crying and I'm sorry I
yeah,
am because I wasn't expecting
yeah,
that to happen.
yeah,
There's that piece as well, isn't
yeah.
there?
And that apology then sort of
Yeah,
can start to erode at the confidence, can't it? Because
definitely.
you're sort of feeling you've got to apologise for something you're less than or not as good as,
Mm.
whatever terminology you might use. Yeah,
Yeah, and then for me, actually, that then becomes about the apology rather than about the reason why you're actually
yeah,
crying in the first place, and whether we can work together to
yeah,
talk that
yeah,
through, or whether you need a moment, or however
yeah.
that looks for you. I remember the first time I made somebody cry in coaching, or the first
Yeah,
time somebody cried,
evil.
I was like, oh my God. And then it was happening quite regularly. And I think that, again, back to that, you provide that space for somebody just
Yeah,
to sit with something, all of that kind of stuff. I think it got to the point where
yeah.
I was getting home and Paul was like, have you made anyone cry today? And I was like, oh no, I don't think so today. I think it's
Yeah,
okay. But yeah, just, like you say, sometimes it's what you need to do, and that's
yeah.
fine.
Yeah, and as a coach, I yeah, obviously the goal is not to make somebody cry, but I think if somebody does cry, it's exactly that, a mark of a safe space, or it's because you've reached a point with them where there's either an awareness and a realization, or
Yeah.
there's a willingness to open up and want to talk
Mm,
about and work on what's getting behind where that emotion's come from. So
yeah,
yeah,
definitely. Okay, so let's move on then and talk about your guard, your glow. So
yeah,
I'm going to kind of hand over to you here, but I know you've got 5 steps. And I wonder
yes,
whether we start with a step at a time and we see where the conversation takes us,
yeah,
if that's okay. Is that all right?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. So yeah, you're right. I've come up with an acronym called GUARD, and I suppose that really, I mean, I think this applies. It could apply to anyone, but when I was thinking about I was thinking specifically around women that might be transitioning menopause, because it can be a time of life where you perhaps start to lose your identity, start to lose a bit of yourself, and these are my words, but I have days where I think I've kind of lost my sparkle. I look in the mirror and there's sort of, you just you've seen a few more lines, and maybe life's a bit difficult, and everything feels a little bit heavy, and those are the times when I think, oh yeah, I'm starting to feel as if I'm losing a bit of sparkle, and that might be momentary. It might only be a day or so, and the next day you think, oh, what was I talking about? But yeah, so I've come up with these sort of five words really, which I think, well, five prompts, I guess, for people to think about. And the first, so it spells the word guard, and the G is around giving yourself compassion. And I think, we are often very compassionate to other people, and often much less compassionate to ourselves. I know you talk about your inner critic a lot, and I think most people would recognize that they have their own sort of inner critic, and that can be a really harsh voice in your ear. And I've we talked about the word should, and perhaps not wanting to use that, but as a people pleaser, I've spent a lot of my life thinking I should do this, I must do that, I need to do this, I should be able to help that. I'm often very self-critical, as many people are as well. I know that's not unique to me. So I've had to learn to be more compassionate to myself. And that is about thinking, what would my best friend say to me if she could hear what I'm saying to myself? What would she say? Or if I was presenting this problem or challenge to her, what would she say? And I know for certain, even if it wasn't my best friend, um, anybody else would be much more compassionate with me, and would put things into perspective and help me think through, actually, what's the worst here, and you're being really, really harsh, and perhaps giving you some of those nurturing phrases or thoughts to think about yourself. So when I am in that place, when that inner critic is really loud for me and really negative, then I am asking myself, what would my best friend say to me, and replacing that criticism with kindness, because I'm pretty certain everyone should do that, and that's not easy to do if your perhaps automatic thoughts are negative, if you automatically think negative of yourself, if you automatically expect perfection, and only 100% will do. So it takes time to work on, I guess it's starting small as well. And when you're able to do it, again, it's been celebrating with yourself that you've managed to do it. So it's starting small and building on that practice. But I think the key there is about awareness. It's about recognizing when you are thinking in that way, and being able to flip that. I know we've talked about that already in this conversation, but flipping from that negative into that positive. So yeah, it's about giving yourself compassion.
I love that. What a great start. I love that. And you're right. Self-compassion is a practice, a bit like confidence is a practice. Self-compassion is also part of that for me. And I'm not that good at it because, as you mentioned, my inner critic, and she's called Betty, which a lot of you already know. But sometimes I have to say myself, what would nice Betty say? What would compassionate Betty say in that scenario, rather than her being my critic? So yeah, brilliant.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. Keep going. I'm excited for the rest of
it. Okay. So the next is about understanding and recognizing your boundaries. So boundaries are so important, and again, that starts with awareness. So it's recognizing what drains you, what energizes you, what might trigger you to think, I'm doing too much, or so again, it's that self-awareness piece. And I think many of us live life at 100 miles an hour. We live in a world where we are connected 24/7. We have so many demands on us, as the world is moving very fast technologically as well, and perhaps as a feeling as humans, we've got to keep up with all of that. AI is part of probably most people's lives these days, and so we often don't take time to stop and reflect on how we are feeling. So that awareness piece is so important. But boundaries for me are, they are around my sleep. They are around the hours that I work. They are around how much I commit to, and we'll come on to a bit more of that later. Um, they are so important.
So important.
It's that, it's all of the physical stuff we know that are important. It's about what we eat. It's about the exercise we have. It's about the hydration that we get. I never have enough water. Rare to, I mean, I did have a bit of a sip of water a minute ago. That's quite rare for me to do. So I think if you're starting to think about your boundaries and explore what they are and what they mean for you, it can be really helpful to keep a bit of a boundary journal, particularly at the start. So perhaps reflecting maybe each day. I would probably start each day, or you could move to weekly when it feels a bit more comfortable. But noticing, have you felt resentful about anything today? And if so, what triggered that? And have you felt overstretched today? In which case, what was overstretching you? Had you committed to too much? Had you not got enough sleep the night before? It's really sort of starting to analyze your feelings and emotions that day, and what triggered those, and then you can start to create some boundaries that are important to you, and they'll be different for everyone, of course.
Yeah, and I actually, in the last season of the podcast, there was a whole episode on boundaries with Emma Jenkins, and we talked about a lot of what you've just said. And I think for me, there's also something about telling other people what your boundaries are. Because you've got those in place, but there's no point in having those in place if other people don't know what they are. There are things. So for me, one of the most obvious ones. There's a lot of stuff that you've mentioned, but for me, one of the obvious ones is I don't work a Friday afternoon. And I'm really clear about that, and everybody knows that. So people often go, "Oh, you don't work Fridays, do you? Oh, it's a Friday afternoon I don't work." But that's quite important for my downtime. It makes the weekend a bit longer. I mean, of course, I will do a Friday afternoon if I need to, but generally that's something that I protect as a bit of a bit of a boundary. But I think you're right about understanding, and then what do you do with those boundaries? So there's like a next step, isn't there, once you've got those in place?
Absolutely, and we'll come on to the next step in a minute. No, that's okay. No, see, it works. It's why it works as a natural flow. But I'm sure when you were sort of setting up your business and you decided not to work Friday afternoons, I bet there was a real dilemma in your mind about, but what if that impacts my clients, and what if they, that turns people against me? And I bet you've never had anyone say, well, you don't work Friday afternoon, so I'm not working with you then.
Because most people go, good for you.
Yeah.
Why don't you have the whole day off?
Yeah. That.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Absolutely. Okay. So if we move on to the next, so we're going to spell out the word guard. So we've used the G for give compassion. We've used the U for understand and recognize your boundaries. And the A is for articulating your needs. And that, I get, picking up on what you said there about boundaries. It will be about articulating those to people. But I've learned to say no to people. I am a people pleaser. I do worry about what people think about me, try as I might not to. And I used to really worry that if I would say no, that would impact in some way. And actually, I've learned to say no, and I've learned to say no to perhaps the trickiest of people, like my elderly mum, like my children who are now adults but still very, very demanding. This feeling, and I think maybe, I don't want to talk about genders particularly, but I think lots of women feel that they must be all things to all people, and I think learning to say no is probably one of the best things that you can give yourself. And again, if I were to give anyone a tip there, I'd say start small. Start saying no to something that doesn't feel that important. Maybe perhaps next time a friend invites you out for a drink and you can't even just practice saying no, even if you do want to go, see what happens. Because it's okay. And, you can say things like, it's great that you've asked me, but I've got a lot on at the moment and I just don't think I can fit it in. Maybe we could do it next month. We don't have to lose friends or break relationships because of it. It's just finding words that are comfortable for you and with you. And because the more you do it, the easier it gets. And I know many of the people listening will have clients, and I think we all have to find ways to say no to clients who, in this current economic climate, can often be ever more demanding as well. And it's about sticking to your boundaries, isn't it? And being clear about what they are. So articulating your needs. Yeah.
And I also think there's courage in yes and courage in no. So
Absolutely.
although the no will often feel harder, but you're right, there's more confidence in you saying no more times. An example of saying no was last night. That we went to the Aldingbourne Trust, which is a fabulous charity. I'd never been over there before for networking. And on the way out, you could go out via the slide or via the steps. So I chose the steps. There was absolutely no way on earth was I going down that slide in front of all those. And I can hear people going, what about your big pants, girl? But actually, for fear of exposing my actual big pants, there was no way was I going down that. And but there was a peer pressure thing that of people going, go down the slide. Why aren't you going? Where you might feel pressured then into. And I was like, absolutely not. No. There's a boundary there for me that I wasn't prepared to cross. Yeah,
absolutely.
So brilliant. Love it. I love that. I love articulating your needs. Again, practice, but a great one. Okay.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so the next is R, which is around reaffirming your boundaries, because they can change or they slip over time. If you've not said no enough, then those boundaries can slip. And a sort of a boundary for me is leaving work. We have an office that we go to. It is only a very short walk from home, in a lovely position. Swap my 3-hour commute each way to a 2-minute walk each way. But I know that if I work too late, then I won't sleep well. And as I've already mentioned, sleep is so integral to my mental health and overall well-being and confidence. So I really make sure that I try to actually finish between 5 and 6. 6 would be late. There are times when I have to stay, longer, of course. But I did it. I almost did it yesterday. Actually, it was something that I needed to do, or felt that I wanted to get done yesterday. And I also have, I go to a breathwork class on a Tuesday night, and I knew that if I worked late, that would then impact on that. And then the likelihood would be that I would end up not going to that as well. And I didn't want to do that because that's really important for me and my well-being. So I didn't. I sort of finished work at 5 actually, and then was in a good place, and of course sent the email that I felt that I must have done this morning, and it was okay. So I like to think of my boundaries as a fence, and that fence needs regular maintenance. And I guess some boundaries will have much taller and higher fences that feel much more difficult perhaps to move and scale. There are some boundaries that perhaps are a bit more movable, a bit like you with your Friday afternoons. If you had to, you would work it, but generally, in 9 times out of 10, you're not doing that. And so, we need to attend to our boundaries. We need to make sure that they are properly maintained. That if we think about a garden fence, you're creosoting it once a year. You are making sure any sort of panels that might be loose are looked after. And so we need to reflect on our boundaries and be, are they still where we want them to be? Do they need moving? And if they need moving because actually that was once important to you, but it isn't anymore, or it's not so important, then that's okay. It's your boundary. You have the right to change it, but you go back to sort of articulating your needs and reaffirming your boundaries if they need reaffirming with other people. So yeah.
And what I love about that is that you almost reaffirmed your own boundaries to yourself last night around that email can wait till the morning. That will impact on the breath work. That will impact then on my sleep. So you almost were able to kind of do that then in that space for yourself, which and I don't think we do that enough, because often the email will win out, right? And it's like, well, do you know what, if that happens tomorrow, it'll probably be a better email anyway, because I'll feel less of the pressure.
Absolutely. I
love that.
Great. So then we're on to the D, the final letter, which is develop routines to protect your energy. And I think I used to think that self-care was a luxury. I tried to be all things to all people, sort of demanding job, a working mum of twins, and everything that goes with that. And, I generally didn't put myself first. So I have had to get much better at that, because I have had some sort of challenges in the past. And so I've had to work really hard at it. But I think of self-care as that it's that routine that sort of helps me to guard my glow. So in the mornings I try and start my day with hot water, sort of lemon and ginger, and I've got a little bit of a routine that I'll wake up in the morning, I'll put the kettle on, then I'll jump in the shower, then when I'm out of the shower I'll sort of pick up the drink and drink whilst I'm getting dressed and ready. I might be listening to a podcast at the same time as I'm doing all that, multitasking of course. And something else I do is practicing gratitude on a daily basis. So, maybe, either when I wake up in the morning or before I go to bed, 3 things that I'm grateful for. And it's trying not to be grateful for, perhaps it's not trying to think about different things every day. So, I feel very blessed to live in a lovely part of the world, to have a very loving and supportive family, and, in the grand scheme of things, not to have too many worries or challenges. Don't get me wrong, everyone has their challenges, but I feel very lucky in general. So it's trying to sort of remember all of that when it can feel a bit difficult. So again, if you're thinking about a self-care routine, I try to think about creating habits, but create habits that are easy to do. And maybe I'm sure you've heard of the sort of terminology around habit stacking. So do another habit when you are doing something else. So we'll brush our teeth in the morning, so maybe it's listening to a podcast when you're brushing your teeth in the morning, or maybe it is standing on one leg to sort of keep your stability and your core going. So when you know that you already routinely do something else, what habit could you sort of introduce to do at the same time or at a similar time, so you are reminded to do it? Because it is all about practice and creating a routine that works for you. And I think often we try to create routines like going to the gym or whatever it might be, for people that just then it becomes difficult to fit in. It becomes almost, it's too big to do. So start small, start with 5 minutes and build up to 25 minutes, rather than, right, I've got to do half an hour of vigorous exercise today. If you're going to really struggle to fit that in,
and then resent it, and then we're back there.
Exactly.
I have a similar routine to you, but mine's with tea. So tea and water. So in the morning, I'll put the radio on, because then I don't have to think about what I want to listen to. It's just provided for me. And And then then I, depending on what the day looks like, I might then either go for a walk, or I might just sit at my desk and plan in a walk. But one of the things that I've done as part of my self-care is my nails, and I realise I've mentioned that a couple of times because I've been this morning. But it's the one appointment that I won't move, partly because for that hour and a bit I can't do anything because they've got hold of my hands, and also partly because I know if I move that appointment I'll never get back in. But it feels like a nice hour every so often where I can't look at my phone because I just can't do anything. And it's an hour where I can just be away from everything without looking at anything. And actually this morning I was the only person in there. It was really nice. I literally could have nodded off. So it's just those things. And I think sometimes people confuse that with self-compassion, and that's maybe a whole nother story, isn't it? So Ali, just really quickly recap then your guard, because I love all of those.
Yes. So guard is give yourself compassion, understand and recognize your boundaries, articulate your needs, reaffirm your boundaries, and develop routines to protect your energy. And the thing is, if you can guard your glow, it's not just going to be you that benefits from that. It will be everybody in your in your world. So think of it as an act for others. When we give to others, that vibrates around you.
And I kind of visualize it as like this glow, almost like just a glow around you.
Yeah.
I'll tell you who I'm thinking of. I'm thinking, if you've watched Inside Out, I'm thinking of Joy, because she has a glow, doesn't she?
Yes.
Like the glow that Joy gives you.
My mind went straight back to the Ready Breck advert.
Exactly like that. That's exactly how it is. I love that. Brilliant. Ali, thank you for sharing. I loved all of those, and for me a lot of those are really, because you know that I'm all about like really practical stuff. For me, that's 5 really practical things that you can go off and implement, right? They're big, but they're small enough to feel like you can start doing something like that straight away.
And even if it's just one of them, you know, you don't have to work on all of them in one go. Just pick one that is most meaningful to you.
And actually probably for me, I might say the one is around the compassion. So starts with the G. So giving myself a bit more compassion when things feel hard, tough, a bit, you know, a little bit. I've had a cold this week, so I felt a bit sorry for myself. You know, all of that. Just be, you know, Monday, I think I went and met someone for lunch, but didn't do anything else. But also did say to that person, just to let you know, I've got a cold. So understand you might not want to meet with me, and that's fine. So there's a little bit there about boundaries of how I wanted to operate. So let's do the quick fire questions then, which by the way haven't been quick fire with anybody, but there's been some great answers. They're not really worked out like quick fire answers. So tell me when the last time was you felt confident. What were you doing? Where were you? And who were you with?
Okay. So I think probably might have been yesterday. Although to be fair, I felt reasonably confident on today with you, which is great. Was on a call with a client actually, and it was a returning client, but somebody that I hadn't spoken to, and they wanted to talk about some mental health training. And you know, going back to something that I'd said earlier on, you know, it's about knowing my subject and also about being naturally curious. So asking. You know, I was able to ask some questions around, you know, why did they need the training? What were they trying to sort of, you know, what need were they trying to fulfill? And you know, obviously knowing what we can deliver. So it felt, you know, it was probably just a very mundane story around sort of when I last felt confident. I think I sort of struggle to answer that because, like I've alluded to, I've been quite blunt about. I don't always feel confident. So even when I present as very confident, I just don't feel it. So any sort of stand-up presentation, I would always feel lacking in confidence before, which then makes me prepare as well as I can, which then obviously, funnily enough, has a knock-on effect of generally making it okay. So I think that's just part of natural. That's just part of natural life, though. So, yeah. Probably
because I think
not
you said,
straightforward
that was
answer.
probably just a mundane example of you, that they were your words. And actually I was thinking, but
Yeah,
isn't that just what confidence is? That
yeah,
actually there are those really small moments, or mundane moments, if you like, where we do feel confident, but because it's not some big grand gesture, we often don't
yeah,
recognize that that's in
yeah,
those moments we're feeling quite
yeah,
confident,
yeah,
which is really
yeah,
interesting. What's a
yeah.
non-negotiable for you then around your confidence?
It is about looking after my mental health, and that goes back
Mm.
to my sleep amongst many other things, because I know, again, like I said earlier, I know that if I am starting to feel a bit low, then that will affect my confidence. I will second guess everything. I will not feel good enough. Everything will just feel very difficult. And I perhaps have a natural tendency to think of the negatives before I'll think of the positives. So I know that's in me, and I haven't already mentioned it, but I have had a couple of episodes of depression in my life where I've needed to take some time off work to. I've talked about the talking therapies. I've needed to take medication as well. So I think I am probably very fiercely guarding of my mental health. So
Mm.
that self-awareness piece, recognizing when my thoughts are perhaps not as positive, I act on that straight away, because I don't ever want to get to the point that I've
Yeah.
been to before. So in answer to your question, what's the non-negotiable about looking after my confidence? It's about looking after my mental health, and that generally will be with sleep. That's the one thing. I don't need too many nights of not good sleep before I am really struggling. So I can get away with one, possibly two. Any more than that, and I'll be getting to the point where I'm not functioning well,
Mm.
and that would show in everything that I do.
Yeah,
Yeah,
interesting. Sleep's fascinating, isn't it?
yeah, so
What is one piece
important.
of advice? And important, yeah, definitely. What is one piece of advice you'd give the listeners to turn their self doubt into confident action?
I think that's probably going back to something that we talked about earlier, and that's about checking your thoughts, checking
Mm.
in on whether they are positive, and if they're not, then how can you reframe that? What's the flip side of what you're thinking? What would your best friend say to you? What's the compassion that you can offer to yourself in that situation? Um, because and I think it's you know that self-awareness piece, that you can do that early on, because then you
Yeah,
can stop it from escalating, I guess. Yeah.
definitely. And then finally, one daily confidence habit that you'd recommend.
I feel a bit cheating here because I've probably already said it. And yeah, come back to that, looking after your well-being, looking after
Yeah,
your sleep. I mean, some people are lucky they only need four hours sleep a night. I'm not one of those people.
me neither.
Um, no. So I think it is about looking after your sleep, and also being very aware of your self-talk and addressing that if it needs addressing. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So sorry, that's probably
No,
the
not
same
at all.
answer to two different questions there,
No,
but yeah,
not at
that's
all. Oh, Ali, thank you. I've loved talking to you. That time has whizzed by
it
really
has, hasn't it?
quickly. I
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
So, if people want to get in touch with you or the
Mm.
team, where
Yep.
can they find you? Where can they connect with you?
Yeah. So with the Thrive team, our website address is www.thethriveteam.co.uk. You can find me as Ali Grady on LinkedIn as well, and I know that you'll have details on my bio, so
Yeah,
yeah, there'll be contact details there as well. Yeah, yeah,
perfect. Thank you.
yeah,
Ali, thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you. Thank you for sharing Guard Your Glow as well. And I'd love to know if any listeners try anything. Maybe they could let us know if they
yeah.
give something a go and if it works for them.
Yeah, that would be lovely. Thank you so much for having me, Gail. It's been
Thank you.
really lovely to talk to you. Thank you.
And thanks for listening, everyone. Join us next time on the Confidence Conversations podcast. So there you go. That was my conversation with Ali Grady. I hope that you enjoyed it as much as I did. I think for me, the one thing from this episode, well, there's lots of things actually, but there's this reminder that confidence isn't always about pushing harder or doing more. It's more about noticing what you need, protecting your energy, and obviously having a bit of self-compassion and being a bit kinder to yourself along the way. I think that that's really important. I love Ali's Guard Your Glow framework. Brings everything back to basics in the best possible way for me. Compassion, boundaries, saying no, maintaining what matters and building small routines that actually support you. Nothing overcomplicated, nothing unrealistic, everything practical things that you can start with straight away. And I might challenge you that if you're reflecting on this episode, you might want to ask yourself, okay, so which part of Guard Your Glow do I need to work on most right now? Because remember, you do not have to do everything. Even choosing one small change is enough. So if you've enjoyed this conversation, you can obviously go and connect with Ali on LinkedIn or through the Thrive team. All the details are in the show notes as normal. And as always, thank you for listening and thank you for taking the time to watch the video if you've done that. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for being here. And of course, I'll see you next time on the Confidence Conversations podcast.